Welcome everyone to today's workshop. We are super excited to have each and every one of you here with us today to share some best practices and to gain some insight from some of the leading experts in our space. Today's webinar focuses on best practices and going beyond some of the basics in that hiring process. So I would love to welcome our wonderful panelist and good friend, John Buckley, who's joining us today to share his expertise.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me, Kayla. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So John is a senior manager of military programs at Textron Aviation. He is also a retired colonel with over 3 years of service. He's also a recognized authority on military to civilian workforce integration, and he leads the enterprise-wide strategy for strengthening recruiting, onboarding, and retention of service members, veterans, Guard and Reservists, and military spouses in his organization. I've known John for a long time, and he has repeated this process across many enterprises, leading to very, very successful programs. So, John, welcome again, and tell us a little bit about yourself, aside from what I just mentioned.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I was 33 years active duty, U.S. Army, and as I prepared for my transition, it was a complete failure. I was just awful at it. I applied 155 times and I didn't get so much as a phone call, and that's not even counting the government jobs that I applied for. But I was able to correct my path and I was very successful in my transition. And ironically, my first job out of the military was to help others transition. And so I've been doing this now for going on 12 years. And I've been coaching, teaching, and mentoring not only the military folks, the spouses, National Guard and Reservists who are looking for employment, but I've also spent a lot of time coaching, teaching business leaders, hiring managers, CEOs, vice presidents, to understand not only the challenges of the immediate transition, meaning getting the job, but also I consider getting the job the starting line. And the acclimation assimilation challenges associated with the transition are probably the biggest challenge. And so that's where I spent a lot of time focusing, as Kayla said in the introduction, beyond just the recruiting piece, but also the retention. And so what goes into that, and what are the variables associated with a veteran or a continuing serving Guard or reservist or even military spouses whose military member is still active. So those are all unique challenges, and they're all very, very easy to solve if you understand the problems.
Absolutely. And that leads right into this first slide, right? So, what are some of the high impact integration and support programs that we can put in place that create long term sustainable retention with our hires? And a lot of the things that you do for the military community to support them can also be replicated and duplicated for other pockets within your organization, leading to overall strengthening retention with multiple business units and diverse groups within your organization. So, John, how many you've worked with a lot of organizations, not just the ones that you have directly had oversight over, but also partners in the space. And when it comes to military friendly organizations, we have sort of a benchmark, and one of those is the dedicated military landing page and those resources that you offer before you even hire the individual, that helps sort of paint a picture of what a day in the life of that organization is, or what promotion and advancement looks like. So when it comes to those pages or those dedicated specialized URLs, how do you feel that a dedicated landing page helps contribute to the success even before someone gets hired?
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is, what is a military member looking for in a business? And they're a little different depending on rank structure to some degree, and they're also different depending on the component they're coming from, or even military spouses. So it's really hard to address each one of those things, but I really important. So when you have external landing page that shows, hey, there are military people here, that is going to be the first thing that everybody's looking for. But then you've got to look at the various pathways that people would be interested in, to include a career pathway, but also the fact that there is a employee resource group that's targeted to veterans. So the simple things that we put on our landing page, for example, certainly it starts out with the video, why veterans work here. And so it is a handful of our veteran employees who are in their own element, telling you what's great about our company from their own perspective. And then secondly, we have obviously a link to the career page. This gives them the opportunity to look at the opportunities we have. A third link that we have is, what are the skill bridge pathways that we have, so that those who are transitioning from active duty looking for those internship opportunities, they can find them rather simply. And then we also have information about our employee resource group. And so I think that last piece is what really is focused more on the retention piece. So that gives them an insight to our commitment to not only finding and hiring military talent, but also retaining them and helping them advance and grow.
Absolutely. As one of the primary sources, right, for attracting military talent being sort of your network, right, or those who you've already known or they're referred to your organization. A lot of companies have started implementing what they call a battle buddy program. And we've seen this very effective across different landscapes, different industries. Can you explain a little bit to our audience today about really what is a battle buddy program and why is it important to showcase that before someone's even hired? And how can that help them with the application process?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's the heart of any successful program, quite frankly. And so I would tell you, I was moved in this direction many, many years ago. I watched a video of an interview. R. Lee Ermey, a Marine who became an actor, very famous for his portrayal of military and other characters. He was in an interview, and his comment was, everybody in this country thinks that the VA takes care of veterans, but quite frankly, it's veterans who take care of veterans. And that wasn't to denigrate the VA in any way, shape, or form, but it was to really highlight the value of veterans, really, every military person taking care of each other. And that's part of our culture. Um, the warrior ethos of never leave a fallen comrade carries over into this space. And so what I have seen invariably over 14 years of doing this is that if I'm asking for a veteran employee to assist in one way, shape, or form, whether it's recruiting or attending a student veteran association meeting, they'll jump at it. It's like, yeah, I'll do this. And so that's the heart and soul of it. So the Battle Buddy program, we employ this at the very beginning with our job seekers. So another element that we have on our landing page is Get Connected link. And so a job seeker or somebody who's interested can click on that, send a very simple, answer about 4 or 5 questions, and then the email comes to me. And the first thing I'll do is I'll reach out to them and I indicate that I'm also a veteran. But then when I learn a little bit more about them, maybe what service they came from or what job or career path that they're interested in, then I can reach over to our employee resource group and get somebody who's either from that service or in that career path and say, hey, I need you to help coach, teach, and mentor this individual through their transition. And so it's a lot like what ACP does in a broader scale, but we do it on a very personal scale. So we start the Battle Buddy affiliation there. Once they join the company, even in their new hire orientation opportunities, we introduce them again to the VetCom, our employee resource group. We call it VetCom. And so we'll introduce them there. We'll invite them to a meeting or two. They'll get to see the value of the organization. And then 2 of our elected officials into the VetCom staff are mentors. I mean, that's what their role is. And so they're the ones who either start the mentoring or, again, align them up with a professional mentoring. And it's a year-long program where a mentor and a mentee will have an association. And then the veteran employee can sign up again for the next year, and it can continue. But through those formal mentoring programs, but secondarily through the association of the employee resource group, the mentoring really enhances our retention, but it also builds a team. And as I said at the beginning, my transition was very, very challenging, but what I didn't really amplify was it wasn't as hard getting the job as it was fitting into society after the military. So I took 18 months of my first months of my military career to learn how to become a soldier, an infantry soldier. But I got 1 week to learn how to become a civilian again. And so when I came back into society, I didn't fit in. I felt like a fish out of water. I didn't understand the culture, the cultural differences, the leadership styles were different, the leadership structures were different, the the reliance on collaboration over directive authority. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but there are so many things and nuances about civilian labor force and the way things are done that is so foreign to a military person that it really takes a lot of effort to help someone acclimate. And what we started to see before we implemented these programs were a new military member would join the group, and within 6 months to a year, they would they would start having challenges and problems. They didn't fit in, but they would leave. They would leave the company, and they would say it's the company's fault. And I would follow up with anybody that was an attrition, anybody who left the company who had self-identified. I would follow up with them and talk to them and find out, what was the heart of the problem. 9 times out of 10, it was a cultural issue. They just couldn't see, and then they go to the new company, and guess what? 6 months to a year down the road, they would have the exact same problems, and it's because they didn't necessarily learn how to acclimate into this environment. And so that's where the mentoring really comes into play. It's a very powerful battle buddy. We don't call it a battle buddy program, but that's exactly what it is. It's just like in combat. Your battle buddy is somebody that you can trust. They always have your back. They're always there for you. And it even goes to combat. If you get injured, right? Who's going to take care of you? Well, you don't want to pull everybody out of the front lines to take care of you. That's where the battle buddy comes in, and they've got to be able to help give you the first aid that's necessary. That's the same concept we carry into this workspace. Nobody's getting injured, but they feel like they're a fish out of water. So how can that battle buddy help? They can coach them, they can orient them, they can translate things for them, they can explain some things to them. And we found that the most valuable thing is if you can explain the why something's being done the way it is, that makes a whole lot of sense. And what we've seen now is our attrition has dropped tremendously in the military space, but more importantly, they're staying a whole lot longer than their non-veteran peers when it comes to staying with the company and the loyalty that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. The retention percentage for military talent is much higher than non-military talent for organizations that do have strategic programs in place. And so my next question to you on that same line is the program that you've currently built and also at the a prior organization that you were with is pretty robust, and it's great, but you've got it all figured out because you've done it before, right? So for organizations that may be new or may not have access to resources, right now, maybe it's just one program manager, maybe two, and they're also doubling as recruiters. What are some of the things that you would suggest that can start this program, and then they can scale into a formal membership program?
Yeah, if you, I mean, I'm fortunate, and I think Textron Aviation was smart in how they brought me into the organization. I am not a recruiter, so I am not encumbered by all the day-to-day recruiting activities, reviewing resumes, and so on and so forth. But I work alongside of the recruiters, and so that being unencumbered really contributes to the mentoring piece. But some of the things that I've been able to implement on a very simple way and a very simple scale is number one, when you're bringing somebody in for an interview, for example, maybe the person or one of the people that's doing the interviewing is a veteran themselves, or to invite them for a tour of the workspace where they're being interviewed for, and the people that give them the tour are veterans, or possibly even bring them into a like a roundtable lunch discussion where they can have more heart-to-heart conversations and do it with a veteran. Anything where you can put those folks into connection with a veteran employee, that can start the process, and that's not really hard to do. You can identify usually in the resume that the applicant has some military affiliation or experience. It'll be in the resume most of the time. So that's an easy way to start, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned self ID, and that
Yeah,
being in the
yeah,
application process or on the resume, but that is one of the hardest things to get people to do, right? It's to raise
it
their hand and
is.
say, "Hey, that's me." So, what are some of the things that you guys are doing at your organization now, or that you've seen others do, that will help encourage self ID?
Well, one of the things that we implemented was in the application process, right? In your applicant tracking system, you can create screening questions. And so what we did is we added 2 screening questions that have no value to them, in the sense that a recruiter can't reject or can't react to the individual who answers them. And there is an option not to answer them, and they won't be disqualified. But one of them is, what's your military affiliation, basically. I think it's the simple words are, what's your which service are you from, I think is what it is. And the second one is, what's your status? And so we give them a drop down box in all of those, so it's really easy. Are they a veteran? Are they a transitioning service member? Are they a military spouse? So we found that still not everybody answers those questions. Probably about, out of the veterans that we see that ultimately self-identify, we're still finding that about 40% do not answer one of those 2 questions. They pass them over. So then, secondly, they might um, indicate in their resume that they have some military affiliation, whether it's a job title that they put in there or a rank or something. And we try to coach our recruiters on what to look for. And if they find somebody in the resume that they are, a military person, then they usually send them to me or my colleague Josiah, so that we can reach out and have a conversation. When they get an offer, we will explain to them what the onboarding and the pre-employment activities are, to include and defining, you will be asked questions about protected veteran status. And we have to explain it to them. I wrote a funny article, which was true, when I was in those shoes, and somebody asked me if I was a protected veteran. I said, well, of course I am. I always carry. You know, I don't need anybody else to help protect me. I was a trained
That's
infantryman, right? I had
fantastic.
clue, no clue what they were asking about. And so I've made that assumption that most transitioning service members, or even anybody military affiliated, will not understand what those questions are and why we ask them. And so after I explain it to them, then they answer them. I mean, I've had people tell me, "Oh, I can't answer those questions because HIPAA. I don't need to answer those questions." It's like, well, there's no affiliation with HIPAA. So as I said earlier, if you can explain the why to somebody, then they will better contribute and answer. So that's the first effort, and that still does not get us to 100%. I think it adds a couple more that will answer those questions. And so then, really, what the last piece is, when we host, for example, we have a really big Veteran Day event that we have, and we present coins, or we present something, that a shirt maybe that says, the veteran logo on it. And so somebody says, well, how come I didn't get one? Because you didn't self-identify, right? So it doesn't necessarily do anything for us in that case that they do or they don't self-identify, because it's really for their own sake, and they become a protected class within the labor force. but it helps us better understand how many military people we have, which can then better orient us to the programs that we need to implement to retain them. So those are the three things that we try to implement. We do it at the front end, and we do it at the coaching, teaching, and mentoring as they're getting, through the process, and then we try to encourage them to do that through the activities of VetCom.
Those are all awesome ways to integrate, and so there, we did a couple case studies with some employers, and to your point, asking specific questions that are not that standard OFCCP verbiage that's kind of scary and nobody knows what it means, and changing that, right? And saying, have you or an immediate member of your family ever served in a branch of the U.S. Armed Forces? Simple yes or no response, and then followed up with, just like you said, John, a pick menu of what is your affiliation? Are you a spouse? Are you a transitioning service member? But to layer on top of that, even before you ask that question at the higher level, individuals want to know why. Why are you asking that? Is this going to hurt my employment? Is it not?
Yep.
And, on the job seeker side, it's hard. It's a full-time job trying to find a job. So you don't want to do anything that you may feel or have you're unsure if it's going to affect the impact of what you're applying for. And so what we've seen is some companies actually will have a video or a small description before that question even comes up about the military CRGs they have within our organization, about some of the volunteer work they're doing in the community, about some of the benefits offered to Guard and reservists that the organization has, whether it be full pay or differential. A little bit about like the Battle Buddy program and how that works. And then after that video or that snippet of text is read, then it makes a little bit more sense. Now it's like, oh, okay, they have all of these resources that I want to be a part of. I'm going to answer the question versus, I'm not really sure how this is going to impact my future.
Yeah.
So John, that's a great initiative, right? Like that you're going out and you're explaining the why. Another point you brought up is incentivization for self-ID. Which also works. It's the unique tokens. It's the, having an emblem on the ID badges. One person sees that. How did you get that? Well, I went into this,
Right.
employee CRM system and I checked a box. It said, I'm a Marine or I'm a soldier, right? And went ahead and that's how you get that logo. So lots of ways you can do it. Be creative. Leverage the resources that you currently have and just highlight them and bring them forward. And sometimes you'll find that a lot of your current employees may not even know those resources exist. So
Right.
it's a great way.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good way to get other people involved. I want to touch a little bit too on this slide about the CRGs, right? Your ERGs or CRGs or however your company is wording those groups nowadays, and how that can impact, all of the things that we discussed as far as the Battle Buddy program, incentivization for self-ID. How do you guys leverage your resource group in a way that helps contribute positively to the types of resources we just talked about?
Yeah, in addition to the mentoring piece, the two other major facets that they get involved in, well, three really, they contribute to the leader development program. So we have certainly a leader development program that's for the whole enterprise, but at the same time, there's a unique piece that the VetCom folks can have some input on, so that senior leaders and others are being prepared in that perspective. But the other two that are really important is the local outreach. So there are many organizations in everybody's community that are focused on our veteran communities, whether it's a VA-run organization or meeting, or it's something like a nonprofit or a nationwide nonprofit, Gold Star Families, or Battle Buddies, or you name it. There's all sorts of programs. Even like something like the Marines Toys for Tots kind of initiative. So getting the veteran connected to community initiatives like that does a couple of things. First, it can help in their acclimation and assimilation because they find other people outside of work who are also former military. But secondly, it gives them a sense of purpose. They can volunteer for those organizations themselves. And so it gives them an added purpose, which is very powerful. So we find that external connection is really strong, and we actually take it one step further. We'll every year we'll look at, as a company, to as a employee resource group, VetCom, how can we partner with them officially? So maybe it's in the fundraising component, it's participating in events. We've partnered with a unique homeless program that takes in veteran homeless, both male and female, and then tries to, through mentoring, put them back out into community. So it's not a flop house. So they participate in those kinds of things. And then they can even take some leadership roles in those things. The second component of it is, how do we provide the resources to them that they might need in the workspace, so they don't have to take time away from work. For example, VA and the disability and comp complexities, if you will, right? So we bring either the VA regional office onto campus, and they can help with those processes or procedures. Or we'll bring one of the VSOs onto, like American Legion or Disabled American Veterans, somebody like that, where those VSOs are the ones that are helping with the disability and comp procedures as well. So anything that we can do to help them through those processes for their own personal benefit, I guess you could say. So we kind of attack it from that way, connect them to the community, as well as how can we help them simplify their processes that they got to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. And that's very unique. A lot of companies don't do that. Like they don't bring the VA in to help with benefits, or a BSO and MSO. And I'll tell you that the agencies that are out there and the nonprofits, they want the partnerships, right? They want to be able to work with you so that they can help their constituents and their audiences better. Someone had asked in the chat, and if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. But someone had asked, does the VetCom group that you mentioned have any association with the VA claims process?
Well,
So is
I
it
just
an
mentioned
internal?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they literally bring the regional VA representatives onto campus, and that's what they're doing, is they're helping with the claims process. Although I think probably the most powerful, maybe not powerful, but probably the most success we've had is when we bring another VSO onto campus, because they understand the whole process from stem to stern, and actually will roll up the sleeves and do it for you. So yes, we help with the claims program, absolutely.
And as far as VetCon is concerned, is that an internal term or a program, an external program?
It's an internal program. It's sponsored by the company itself. We do have elections every year, so we have a different president, vice president, like I said, the two mentors, a secretary, and so there's a lot of good turnover, and still some stability, in the sense that some people will stay with the leadership organization, for a couple of years. We try to change a president out, but other than that, most of the other people could be the same. So it's an internal organization. They get some funding, and then they might have to do some other things externally to raise money for the contributions that they're making to a local organization.
Nice. So the next topic I want to talk about a little bit about is the Garden Reserve. So if we can move on to the next slide. All right, perfect. Um, so some organizations will offer benefits to Garden Reserve, right? And so let's rewind it a little bit back to the basics, and what that employment experience may look like for a Garden Reservist. So in the past, when salary differential or any benefits were put in place, there wasn't really a specification around, oh, this will take place for 12 months, or you can utilize these benefits, 26 days of the year. So now that with Garden Reserve, sometimes federal and state call ups happen simultaneously, which extend that call up period. What we've seen is that some of the policies in place by employers don't really account for that or cover that, as far as the limitations in the time periods where those benefits would apply. So, what advice do you have for organizations when it comes to looking at how they can strategically word that policy or enhance that policy so that it's not being looked at from a different lens in one department as the other because the wording's not specific enough or not big enough.
Right. Well, I am certainly not one to favor bureaucracy. And so if you deal directly with the Guard and Reserves, it's just like any other military or government agencies. It's going to be really, complex. And especially if you're not a military person, you might get confused with everything they're asking and telling you. So what I would highly recommend is you start with building a relationship with the employee support of the Guard and Reserve. ESGR. They are your friends. You can start out by signing the oath that basically says you'll support. There's no money involved in it, but it basically says you as a company support hiring Guard and Reservists. They can help you with what minimum requirements you might have as a business who hires Guard and Reservists or guards well, both Guard and Reserves. Um, and, and so they have some other initiatives that you can consider. And so there are some things that you can go above and beyond to really highlight that you are, in fact, a military friendly company. And so one of those things is, as the chart says, a differential. So if an employee gets called into duty, whether it's a weekend duty or a little bit longer of a duty that conflicts with their work schedule, then we would make sure that we would pay them the differential. So if they're losing money basically when they go off onto drill, we would pay that differential. And that I think is really important and speaks volumes to your concern for their well-being and support of them continuing to serve our country. And so that to me was a major change that we made here at Textron Aviation, and we will pay that differential for more than just 1 year. Certainly, if they get deployed for the 1 year, yes, but if they get deployed on the weekends or get multiple short deployments like we saw a couple of years ago, then we're going to make sure that we pay that differential regardless. Certainly, guaranteeing the benefits and guaranteeing their health care, especially for the family, is critical. And again, I think that really is something that's very simple to put into place and is a must. I think it really is, because the last thing you want is the military member to feel like, oh, my family isn't being taken care of now, and here I am taking care of you from a standpoint of defense. So I think that's really, really simple to do and something that should be implemented as well. One thing that we're not necessarily doing at a centralized level, and I've really been studying how we can make a formalized company-wide kind of a minimal training plan for the reintegration. Right now, it's done at the leadership level. I'm more of a consultant there as to things that they ought to consider, and they integrate them back into the workforce as opposed to just saying, oh, welcome back and get back to work. So there is that reintegration piece, and what a lot of business leaders don't understand is that the acclimation assimilation challenges that I highlighted for myself basically occurs every time a guard or reservist gets deployed, and then they come back, even for a short duration, because they're immersed into this tribal society called the military, where success and survival of the team far outweighs any individual. And that's their mindset. And then they take the uniform off and they come back to work. And although they're kind of comfortable with their surroundings, the culture is different. And they have to go through this acclimation every single time that they re-enter back into the workforce. So what are you going to do as a leader to ensure that it's a smooth reintegration into the workforce? You don't need to baby them, you don't need to coddle them, but you do just need to account for the structural and functional, and more importantly, the cultural differences that they're going to undergo. And I think that's probably the most important piece, and that's why I'm looking at trying to potentially centralize that here at Textron Aviation.
Absolutely, reintegration is critical to retention. To the points you just made, and to the simple fact of think about it. Whatever you were doing a year ago in your current role is likely not the same exact thing that you're doing right now. So if someone was to leave, how have those business KPIs changed? How have the departmental goals changed? What has been created, right? Are there any new technology suites implemented? So things that we're in every day that we may not realize, oh, we brought in um, a new system that looks at resume scores, right? While that's on the back end of the system and everybody can see the score in the CRM, what is the difference between what you used to use and what you're doing now, right? And so those simple little things on top of the culture is so important to retaining them, because if they come back to an environment where they feel like they can't excel because they're missing information, you're going to lose that talent through that
Yeah,
door.
a large portion of our workforce is manufacturing. And so if they're in manufacturing with the introduction of new technologies, the rapid growth of AI and so many other things that are influencing how we do work, within a year, that changes. And so just helping them better understand either new processes or the implementation of new tools within the process, all those take time. And so that needs to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. How do you feel that programs can really invest into measurable business outcomes or practices when it comes to the success of some of the initiatives that they have?
Say that one more time. Uh,
How do you feel that a company can measure their investment and success into some of these programs that we've discussed? So, like your ERG, BRG groups, right? Your battle buddy programs, guard and reserve policy. How can companies best put measurements behind the success of these things, so that they know where to put that corporate investment?
no, okay. That is a hard one to really not to answer, but to fulfill, I guess. And so what we've done is we've looked at it from an analytical standpoint. Certainly, the very simple numbers of, are you attracting more talent, right? And secondly, then are you retaining that talent? But we try to dive a little bit deeper into promotions, lateral movement, economic adjustments, meaning are they getting paid more, right? So they're getting the benefits and the annual reviews that are very positive. And then we're also looking at the negative in the sense of attrition, voluntary or involuntary attrition. So when we look at all that information, we can really identify where we're having challenges, or where we're showing success. And so I can look at the numbers, and I just did this on Monday. We do this every other week. I can see that our promotion rate for our protected veterans is higher, um, by at least a quarter than the general population. So that's telling me that we're doing something good within the population. I can also tell you that the hiring percentage of our protected veterans to the general population has increased almost an entire percent over a year. So again, that's showing me that we're attracting more talent. But then you look at like I said, the voluntary, involuntary numbers. They're also, the involuntary numbers have dropped, but the voluntary numbers have slightly increased. So now I take the next step, and I literally call everybody that's on that list if I can get their numbers, and if they're willing to talk to me to learn what we can do better. And what it really has done for me is just reinforced the cultural differences. That is the number one reason, quite frankly, is the acclimation assimilation challenges that we're seeing. So I would say that you can implement formal analytics that would really help you, I think, be more precise in what you're doing. But you could also just do it very generally, looking at the big numbers of hiring numbers and retention numbers. I think that's probably the best.
Absolutely. And the self-identification piece, right? Like if you're doing all of these things,
Yes,
putting all of these things in place, you should see an increase in the individuals who are self-IDing within your organization.
right.
We can move into the next slide, please. So it's infrastructure for advancement. So you talked about promotion and advancement rates. and tracking those for success. What are some of the standard practices that your organization is doing when it comes to promotion and advancement rates? So do you have any MIT programs, fast track programs, education or credentialing programs, or partnerships that help expedite or help highlight the promotion and advancement of military talent?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, we have the VetCom, some of the elected officials that um, really influence some of the leader development training that we have, and we're looking at actually building a separate standalone for military leaders as well, as opposed to, or maybe not as opposed to, but certainly integrated with the traditional leadership development, which they need as well. But some of the things that we're doing from a certification standpoint that's really helping our veteran employees, but secondly is even attracting more talent is in the certification piece. So we implement tuition assistance to help folks from the military get certified. And I'll just give you one example of one program. So we're an aerospace company, and so we do a lot of not only manufacturing of airplanes, but then we also service the airplanes. So there's a pretty big need for licensed airframe and power plant mechanics, AMP licensed mechanics. And so in the military, what's interesting for all specialties is, especially in the technical realm, that a lot of our safety and compliance standards are imposed on the military by other government agencies, like the FAA in this case of aircraft mechanics. Well, guess what? In the aerospace company industries, they're also uh, guided by the FAA. It's identical. The difference is you don't get the certification when you're in the military. You have to do something additional to do it. And so there are some various venues and other things and opportunities, but they really complicate a military person's life. So what we've created is a 6-week program that will help an aircraft mechanic get their AMP license. I mean, they have to have some minimal requirements, but we're doing that so that we are providing the tuition assistance. We are hosting the instructor in our campus to do the training, but we're also paying the employee full time while they're getting this training. And then when they get the license, that means that they can increase in their job scope. They advance into a different role, which means they get more money. And so this is really enhancing their abilities to advance and grow. And then we have a lot of aircraft maintenance leadership or management roles that require these AMP licenses. So now it really opens the door for them to advance and grow in a career path that they really want to do. So that's what we're trying to do. We're looking at what are the various skills and experiences that are leaving them short of the certificates that are required for them, and then we're trying to help them get that so that they can really open the door to advance and grow. So that's just one example of what we're trying to do.
That's awesome, especially that the organization is backing, the financial commitment behind getting those credentials. If you are with an organization that maybe doesn't have the financial resources or maybe a little bit smaller and not able to provide that, you can look to also external partnerships. There are partnerships like Onward to Opportunity, O2O, which is offered by IBMF, where they will help get your employees credentialed. And so you can partner with those sort of organizations. They exist, they're out there. So leverage those if your organization does not, is not as resourced as John's is. So, question about like even before we get to the part where they're an employee and they're using this credentialing to help advance their career. Sometimes during the application process, servicemen may look, or especially transition servicemen, they look at the job description and see that there are requirements and then preferred skills, right? How do you feel that that impacts the advancement of an individual either applying for a higher level role or how they may interpret the difference in those job description titles?
Yeah, that opens the box to my favorite discussion of the applicant tracking system in general, which is a huge barrier to military folks who are looking for employment. Um, I refer to them as landmines. The applicant tracking system leaves a whole lot of landmines, and part of it is in the job description, as Kayla is mentioning. And so if we're not careful how we write the job description, we may disqualify otherwise very, if not heavily qualified military folks. So I'll give you one example, and it's been my favorite for a long, long time. I'm not sure what it is about the supply chain career path, but just about every hiring manager I know who posts a supply chain job says you must have a bachelor's degree. And I'm like, you've got folks who've done supply chain in the military for 20 plus years. They may have an associate's degree. They could possibly have the bachelor's degree, but the vast majority of them won't. So you're disqualifying these people that have extensive experience. And quite frankly, I attack this in multiple ways. One is, let's rewrite the job description. That's a little more time intensive. It's a little more confrontational. It's worth it, but it takes a little bit more time. The second one that I apply is more or less just directly consulting the hiring manager when I have an applicant, a military applicant who is otherwise qualified. Hey, this person doesn't have a bachelor's degree, but they've got 15 years of experience. If they apply, would you still consider interviewing them? And it kind of breaks through that process. It helps the recruiter advance the person through the applicant tracking system, which would have otherwise disqualified them. So those are two of the techniques that I've implemented. The third one is to get veteran employees to help write the job descriptions. So find a senior veteran who is in the supply chain arena and say, hey, would you work with this hiring manager to help write the job description so that it doesn't disqualify service members. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do. But then the last one is, again, through the mentoring programs that we have established. One of the things I try to help teach a transitioning service member or a job seeker is better understanding what the qualifications are and what they really mean. Because I know I didn't understand them. I thought that they were just kind of references. Hey, okay, I've got 4 out of the 5. They'll still hire me when I don't really understand how the applicant tracking system is used, and most of the time I'll just be disqualified, or they'll certainly move me to the bottom of the list and I'll never get interviewed. So those are the 4 things that we're trying to implement to help overcome them. I think the one that's probably the most successful is to just rewrite the job description, but that's a little bit more of a time-consuming, confrontational process.
Yeah, I have seen some companies that will add in to those requirements and or military equivalency may apply, um, and then have a asterisk that says, evaluated on a case by case basis, or may be determined by hiring manager. So different small words, like you mentioned, just adding those in. If you are unable to rewrite the whole job description, but I would highly recommend what John said, is
Yeah.
just re
Well,
looking at it and starting over.
we went the path that you talked about, Kayla, where we just implemented the equivalent military experience. And what we found out is the recruiters, they don't know what the military experience is and what's relevant. And on the flip side, a lot of our military folks don't really understand what's relevant in the civilian world. So I'll give you just one case in point. Manufacturing alone. They say, we want you to have 5 years of manufacturing experience. And most military people, especially if that's their only career, they're going to say, no, I don't have manufacturing experience. And I liken it to, if you've ever been in any kind of a maintenance facility in the military, you've been in a manufacturing environment, because what they really want is somebody who understands how to wear PPE, how to walk between the yellow lines, how to be safe, how to be environmental stewards. All those things that we do in the military with our eyes closed, that's manufacturing environment. So you can do that. It's a simple effort, but then you really have to educate your recruiters. And in my case, what ended up happening was they just sent me all the military resumes. So we don't know what they did. How does this fit? And so it is a process, and it does start the discussion. So that is an easy way to start it. But I think, again, the more comprehensive is just change the job description. I'll give you just one final example. We had a electrical tank mechanic. So he worked on the electrical components of the tank engine, which is a jet engine. Okay, so an M1 tank is a jet engine. And he applied for an electrical job in manufacturing, but the job description here said aircraft experience. One word. So the hiring manager looked at his resume. The hiring manager interviewed him. The hiring manager loved him. The hiring manager wanted to bring him on, but then he said, wait a minute, he's not qualified because he doesn't have aircraft experience. So it was just one word in the job description, and we just struck that word. And it took us almost 8 months to finally get that changed throughout the entire process. So something as
Yeah.
simple as that can really just stop everything in its tracks.
Yeah, another one is customer service too, right? Like some
Exactly.
Rex customer service experience. Well, in the military, you're like, well, I don't deal with customers. It's not retail. I don't have that. But really,
Right.
you're looking for like management and people skills, which definitely the military has that. You can't choose who you get
Yes.
to work with.
Exactly. Exactly.
So fun time, so we'll run through it. But if you can jump to the next slide, which is actually one of our most important. So this is spouse and portability support. So supporting from the home front, right? Spouses are a large majority of our talent pool when it comes to military talent. But sometimes there are some exceptions that have to be made for some of the encounters that they may have or challenges that they may have because their spouse is deployed or because they have to relocate. So, John, if you could give our audience just sort of a baseline on how we can go about beginning to build what that looks like for our organization. Um, what are the
Sure.
first steps to understanding what?
I'm getting a technical glitch for some reason. You disappeared. Is it on my end?
Yeah, no, it was on
Can you
my
hear
end
me,
too,
Kayla?
so I couldn't.
Okay. Okay.
I can
I
hear you.
think I
Can you hear
understood the
me?
whole question, and okay, I can hear you fine. Yeah. Now, um, so I think if you look at the statistics, one of the interesting statistics are if you if a transitioning service member from active duty is leaving their military installation and the spouse is employed in that community, the likelihood of them to stay in that community it exceeds the standard. So it's 50 to 60%. And if the military spouse is not employed in that local community, then they would return home or something else, wherever they go. So I mean, if you look at it this way, I mean that's a great thing to do. Um, but the first thing is to understand the portability component of it. If you hire an actively serving military spouse, then they may only be able to work for you for a year or two in person until that military member gets their PCS orders and have to change stations. And then what do you do with that talent? So um, you've got to be able to allow them to work remotely or virtually, or if you're a nationwide company and have multiple locations, maybe they can change their locations, and you just got to anticipate that and prepare that in the initial discussions of what's within the realm of the possible. So what we ended up doing was looking at the different jobs that we have. Certainly the manufacturing jobs are not portable, right? I mean, you just can't build an airplane from your living room, or anything like that. So
Maybe
those
one day,
types of jobs,
just not today.
yeah, yeah, maybe. Um, but they can certainly contribute from an HR standpoint, a finance, accounting, possibly even engineering, maybe with some traveling. So if you identify those career fields that could be portable, then that's where you start, I think. And then one of the best things that I did was I joined the Military Spouse Employment Program, which is a Department of Defense program. And they have access. You can post your jobs there. They have mentors and the like, and it really opens the door to those possibilities. The second most successful thing we did was we have military installations that are nearby our facilities. And so we reached into the TAP offices, and some of them will have military spouse employment representatives. So you could start there. And then the third method would be just find your uh, almost every spouse organization has a Facebook page. So we'd get permission to advertise on the Facebook pages, and that's how we would then share the information in a local installation to our local opportunities. So that's where we've had the most success, is we start them in a job that is with the company uh, in person, but in a job that is portable, and we know that up front.
Yep, that helps a ton. As far as accommodations in our EAP programs or outside of the career portability, do you have any examples of things that employers can put in place to support our military spouse population?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So we've had some organizations that will put together like care packages for military spouses who take leave when their guard and reservist gets called to active duty, right? Or having an emergency fund for childcare services if in the event the partner has to discharge.
Yeah, our biggest success has been through VetCom and our examples where we've built partnerships in our local communities, and so we don't have to take it on completely by ourselves, so to speak. But certainly, if a National Guard or reservist employee gets deployed, then we can partner with those people who we have partnerships with to help provide those, either the care packages or the support structures, or please reach out information. And so we try to stay connected that way, but also provide a more stable resource that's in the community already. That's one of the best things that we've ever done. But secondly, is we include our military spouses in everything we do. And so if we hire a guard or reservist, the spouse is included in any of the VetCom opportunities that we have. So that builds a network. So when you get to know somebody, and that makes it simpler. The labor force is not like the military, where you necessarily have forced fun where you get to meet the spouses and the family members, but we try to create those types of environments, especially within the VetCom community, more so than anything else. So that's where you get to meet them, and then that support structure kind of comes more naturally.
That's fantastic, and that's not very often, right? Again, that you're bringing in the home front into the work atmosphere when it comes to your ERGs and BRGs. Can you think of any other examples of activities that employers can do to get the entire family involved into the networking and bonding of other employees within the organization to create that family environment, right, or that group setting versus an individual?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we've done to do that. I mean, certainly uh, not necessarily reserved for the military community, but we'll have like a day at the zoo, and it's during a work day, and employees, we kind of go half scale or whatnot, but employees can take the time off. It doesn't count as a holiday, and they can go out to the zoo, and it's more for their families, and the leadership is there. And then, like I said, VetCom will use that as an opportunity to amplify that within the veteran community, to try to build that partnership. The other thing that we've done, and this is because we've as an organization see the value in the community and in the family, is we became a major sponsor of a facility here. We call it the Exploration Place, which is really tailored to young kids, and the name kind of speaks for itself. And so we've got an entire I don't know, a courtroom or a courtyard almost, that is dedicated. I mean, it's our idea, it's our money, we put it in there. So there, that it's a great place to meet, and it's a great place to visit, and we use that as a gathering place quite a bit. So again, anything that you can do within the community to build that camaraderie is and expand it to the family. So the VetCom also does it. For example, they did a night out at the Top Golf, and so again, it's funded through the company. Again, they get some limited resources, and so they opened it up to the family members. And again, it's just a great way to kind of replicate that military environment, but then get to know the people, the kids, the spouses, which again enhances that the situations if an active duty or excuse me guard or reservist gets activated, then you've got that network already pre-built.
Absolutely. And just to add on to that, a lot of local organizations to wherever you're at are looking for places to host things, right? Whether it be a or employer coalition in, a city, whether it be a nonprofit, or an advocacy group. And so coming in and allowing, if you have those resources available, like the courtyard that you guys have, can be a great way to send to supporting the community within the workforce and externally. And I think we are coming up on time. If you guys have any questions, feel free to them in the chat. I think I saw a couple of them coming through. Um, One of them was, as far as the ERG and BRG groups and VetCom, are those full-time roles or are additional roles to days? I think that was a question for
Yeah,
you, John.
they're in addition to jobs. Yep. So the VetCom elect these are their back. I'm back. I don't know what happened, but everybody disappeared.
My apologies. I'm not really sure. I think the system kind of glitched, or maybe the internet, the land of the internet is not meeting up to expectations. But I think the
Yeah.
question, John, was, is the role with the ERG and BRG a full time role or is it a volunteer role?
It's a volunteer role, so they have to volunteer to really it's like an election, and so they get elected into the role, but they have a full-time job, so this is additional duties that they're doing as an elected member of VetCom.
Okay. And the next question was, if an organization wanted to partner with or find local community groups or nonprofits, what are some of the ways that they can find these organizations, and understand whether or not they're vetted or, they're a good organization to partner with or what they're doing is effective?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have an easy solution for that because I've had to just, in some cases do a search, right? There's a whole list of them. You can go to the VA. They sometimes have, at least in the local community, a listing of those. We are fortunate here in Wichita that we have what we call Veteran Providers Coalition of Sedgwick County. So any organization or individual that provides any assistance to veterans or their families are invited to this networking event, and so we build an association with them and get to learn a little bit more, and then we vet them obviously to make sure that they're organization in good standing. I don't know that I have an easy solution for that. I do have a laundry list of those organizations. I'd be happy to share the ones that I do have that I've at least found to be useful, whether the partners that we have at or just at the individual? Yeah. I can't hear. I can't hear you, Kayla. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Let me unmute and mute again. Is that
Ah,
better?
now you came back. Yeah, I couldn't hear a thing. I can hear you now.
I apologize. John, I just wanted to say big thank you us today and sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your insight of information. And we were really, really, really excited that you were able to join us today. So big thank you.
It was my honor, and I
And to
appreciate
our
the
audience,
call.
thank Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. And we'd love to have you back to talk a little bit more about spouse employment opportunities. And for our audience, if you are joining us today, big thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend with us. If you're interested in learning more about memberships and how you can jump on board with what we've got going on here at Military Friendly, feel free to scan that QR code that you see up on your screen and book a call with one of our experts, our in-house experts. We would love to help work with you on some of your recruitment goals. John, till we meet again, I'm looking forward to
Yes.
it. Maybe we can come back and we'll do a spouse segment. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. And audience, again, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time.